Hello, guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another episode of our Planet Zoo Modspolites. This will be part 139, 239, I mean. And yeah, we all know what this goes on about. So this is talking about some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got, again, we always have a quite interesting assortment, but this is a particularly interesting one. We've got a few birds. We got a little rodent from Australia, or a little marsupial. Not a rodent, a marsupial. Convergence. Then we've also got a couple lions. So I would be lion, if you knows, I would be enjoyed talking about that, of course. And then we've got a couple of other extinct animals. So let's get stuck into this one right away. So our first one's a Great Cakes mod. You know how much I love a good Great Cakes mod. So this is here. Oh, and look at that. That's happened multiple times. There we go. It's because he's flying. Oh. This is a little bit buggy, but that's okay. No, that's alright. This is because it's a new one. Don't worry about that. Let's see if I can get another better look at this one. There we go. So this is the Milky Stork. So, Masterna cynera. So this is a very interesting animal. So these storks can get to about 90 to 100 centimeters tall, 95 to 100 centimeters tall, so about a meter tall. And I imagine a wingspan of no more than 2 meters. They are quite large, with predominantly white ibis-like stalk. That's what it looked like, with a black patch by the base of the bill. Breeding adults, you can see here, these are the breeding adults, tend to be kind of a creamy tone in plumage, with a bright yellow bill and bright red face and legs. While non-breeding adults, you can see, lack that milky tone going on there. But they have the dark red facial, pinkish yellow beak, dull red legs and feet. So that's kind of typical of most birds. They're not quite as, interesting looking in that regard. Immature generally are a good deal dabbler, and with more feathering on the heads and bare parts of dull yellow. And they have been recorded actually hybridizing with the painted stork, which is quite interesting as well. So this is only one species. They aren't no other subspecies or anything like that. They're typically found from Cambodia, the western peninsula of Malaysia, Sumatra, Java, and Sulawesi, so pretty much Southeast Asia. And unlike the painted stork, they are actually mostly coastal species. So in contrast to them, they forage typically more in tidal mudflats, saline pools, freshwater marshes, fish ponds, and rice paddies. And they nest in bordering mangrove swamps and forests. They now only really occur inland in flooded forests, such as the Selotole sap in Cambodia, where the birds disperse during the wet season to the coast. So not much is known about their migration or movements. Some seasonal movements are probable outside the breeding season, with Sumatran ones seen to disperse across the coast, and some crossing the straits in September, or maybe even further afield to Java as well. So they will move as necessary, but they don't do a big migration like a lot of other birds. In terms of diets and foraging, they tend to eat like what most storks eat. They'll eat all sorts of small fish like mudskippers, snakes, frogs. Quite a diverse diet. Totally depends, mudskippers, catfish, eel catfish, shrimp, crabs, all sorts of different things that make sense for their diet. And their diet can actually, the estimated daily food intake is about 600, 700 grams typically. And they tend to forage shallow pools and mangroves to find those food. Don't make too many noises, but away from breeding colonies, when they're around the nest, they'll make a fizzy call, as given during the up-down display, and also bill chattering. They go with their bells to kind of get the attention of others. The breeding, the peak appears to be in the dry season, so between July to August, both in Sumatra and Java. Although on Pulau Robut of Northern Java, evidence of November 1983, March 1984, and also August 1984 they were breeding. They're also colonial nesters, so they nest together in the trees, and they had nests usually about 6 to 12 meters apart in tall trees, and they lay clutches of about 1 to 4 eggs, and the clutch typically has white down, so quite similar to most birds. Quite impressed with that one. If we can see the babies there, I don't want to risk clicking on them just to mess up the camera, but we'll have a look at you. So these guys are sadly considered quite endangered. They were considered vulnerable for a while, but due to severe population declines, that has led to this reclassification. Global populations estimated in 2008 is about 2,200 individuals, which was a reduction from 5,000 or more during the 1980s. So the core population is in Indonesia, with perhaps about 1,600 birds, and then about 500 or so in Western Java. And the other, other ones split around since, but they've estimated decline about 70% in a lot of those places. Most of the threats these guys are facing today is habitat loss due to conversion of tidal flats, including mangroves, to fish farming and rice cultivation, but also hunting for adults and taking the eggs and chicks for food is also quite a severe problem. There are tiny populations that do remain in Cambodia and Malaysia, with vagrants reported in Vietnam, where it was formerly breeding, and Thailand, so hopefully they can recolonize there. Malaysian populations number fewer than 10 birds in 2005, but actually gone up to 100 in 1984, so we're quite happy with that. In Indonesia, colonies are located in at least 5 protected areas and 1 on Java, and these single colonies of Malaysia and Cambodia are also protected. In Malaysia, there's also a breeding program, so this is a great example of how zoos help wild animals. So yeah, they're around. So they breed them in Malaysia. And there's a captive breeding and reintroduction program, and they release individuals into the Kuala Senggolo National Park, with a total of 31 birds actually being released between 2007 and 2010, with a successful hatching of 2 chicks in 2010. So ways that we could probably help them in the future includes the establishment of additional protected areas, with includes their feeding areas and colonies around their habitat, and also education about teaching people why they're important and stuff like that. So yeah, really really cool little mod, and this one is also really cool because Great Cakes Mod has really started to actually do like custom models and custom animation. So this is all custom. So they can see all they fly like that. You can see that's all custom. That's all them doing their own thing. There is a little bit of jank to it, but the fact that Great Cakes Mod is really pushing the boundaries and trying to do some new things with it, I've got to say I'm very very impressed. As I always am. Because why not? So let's carry on. So we're going to carry on to... got it. Let's see what we got next. So next up is an even better example of how zoos help animals. We've got here the Sirocco dove. So let's have a look at these guys here. Very, very cute little guys. Are you an adult? Yes, you are. So this one's done by Eliza Planet Zoo. You probably recognise that name. They've done quite a few birds and some odds and ends animals, so quite excited to see these. Relatively new mod to the scene too. So this is the Sirocco dove, or the Grayson's dove, also called Zeydanica graysoni. These guys are a dove species that are actually extinct in the wild. So no more wild ones exist, they only live in captivity. It was endemic to the Sirocco Islands in the Relovadillo Islands off the west coast of Mexico, and the last sighting in its natural habitat was in 1972, and it survives only in captivity. A reintroduction program is being prepared though, so we'll get into that. So it's a close relative of the mourning and eared doves, and was once considered a subspecies of the mourning dove. But in captivity it does hybridize with the mourning dove, and almost all privately owned birds, as well as several of the captive breeding birds, are known or strongly suspected to be hybrids. They are excluded from the reintroduction program as there is evidence of unique adaptations in the Sirocco species. The scientific name commemorates Zeldina Latina Julie Bonaparte and American ornithologist and artist Andrew Jackson Grayson. That's how they kind of honour him. So, medium-sized dove, primarily terrestrial as well, with long legs for a type of dove. They reach about 26 to 34 centimeters, or 10 to 13 inches long, and weigh about 190 grams on average. In its overall colour, it agrees with its relatives, very similar, though it's coloured to be strongly coloured insular it skins to be a strongly coloured or stronger coloured insular representative of the mourning dove, so quite similar. The male is kind of a deep crimson on its head and underparts with an airstreak like its relatives. The nape is kind of blue-grey, and the neck has an iridescent pink patch, most prominent after a molt. The underparts are rufous brown. Females and juveniles just slightly duller in colour. The most conspicuous difference between the mourning dove is darker colorations and more well-developed feet that is used amid the dark lava rocks and in the shallow, shady forests of its island home. So, because of this, these guys live in a slightly different areas, so there were no native mammalian predators in the area, but there was always constant threat from red-tailed hawks and frigate birds. The advertising call begins with a disbelic coo, followed by 3 single calls, and ends with another disbelic call. And these are 5 elements, last 1 second. So, all these cute little guys. Not the right call. Not that one there. So the arid and fairly barren Chicken Islands, which is 400 kilometers east or west of Sirocco, has an endemic subspecies of the mourning dove. These birds are roughly intermediate in appearance between the Sirocco dove and the mainland mourning doves, and it is highly likely that they represent a later colonization by mourning doves rather than early stock, which evolved its phenotype independently from, but also parallel to, the Sirocco birds. So they're likely not the same species. They're just, they are different species, but there's convergence. This would mean that predation by great frigate birds is significant enough to select towards cryptic darkening of the plumage, as these are the only predators of that subspecies. On the semi-desert islands, such as Sakharon, birds would be expected to evolve toward lighter plumage to better withstand the heat and lack of reliable freshwater sources, which makes sense. So yeah, that shows how prominent predation is. And the upper elevation limits of these guys about 950 meters. So in terms of ecology, there is a marked behavior difference between the difference in the mourning doves. They also have been called the solitary dove because you never saw them more than one male and one female together. And the doves, particularly in the adult males, chase away their young as soon as they can fend for their own, and the partners split for the time being. This too is believed to be an adaptation to the former dominance of aerial predators. Less local concentrations of birds, let alone young experienced ones, would present easy targets for hawks. Typical of many birds on island-lacking mammals, they actually show little fear of humans and introduce predators such as cats, which is, of course, foreshadowing to why they most likely became extinct in the wild. So the last habitat in which this dove was found was low seasonally humid forests, about 500 meters across above sea level. Before the introduction of cats, it seasonally descended into the lowland areas where it was quote-unquote common. In March 1953, for example. This may have coincided with the peak of breeding season, where many birds had dependent young and dispersed widely to gather more varied food. This was the case for the Sirocco mockingbird, the other mid-sized native land bird of Sirocco, Socorro, which is apparently a very similar habitat preference. So its last refuge was dominated by endemic plants, such as fig trees and black cherry and stuff like that, which were all native to the island. And at least at the time of its last record, it was seen to be dependent on the intact understory of spurges and relatives and ferns, which made cats, maybe because cats hunted less effectively in the dense foliage. It is a frugivore, and as all the cases with doves and pigeons and stuff, it played an important role in the reproduction of trees in its habitat. One of these trees was actually classed as vulnerable by the IUCN and was found to associate with the fig trees. But in terms of how we know it breeds in the wild, we know virtually nothing. However, each generation is estimated to be about 6.6 years. Parallels in altitudinal migration and the equally solitary mockingbird might take it as an indication that breeding activity was around March through April. In captivity, though, they generally lay 2 white eggs in a nest box about 1 to 2.5 meters above the ground, or 3 to 8 feet above the ground. Incubation lasts about 14 to 17 days, and the young fledge at about 14 to 20 days. See, that's a male. See if you can spot a female. They're not too different, very similar in most regards. So the primary reason for the extirpation of the Sirocco dove was the predation of feral cats, not surprising. But other pressures may have contributed, because in 1856 sheep were introduced, which really changed the vegetation of the island, turning most areas below 500 meters into open vegetation. This may have caused some decline in their numbers, but did not pose an existential threat to the species. However, in 1957, a military base was established on the island, and the evidence found by Gell and Parks suggests that feral cats had been introduced at the time the military base was established, and would ultimately cause the species extinction. Alright, so that's a female there. That's another female. No, that's a male. Let's see if we can find a baby. There we go. Have a look at the baby. So the feral cats were established and ultimately was the cause of their extinction. 2 expeditions in 1978 and 1981 failed to find the species, and it was declared extinct in the wild in 1983. The species, though, completely avoided extinction due to the collection of several doves in an expedition in 1925. The subsequent use of these doves in aviculturists resulted in about 100 doves being available for captive breeding programs beginning in the late 1980s. The species reproduce no less willingly in captivity than other dove species, provided its different ecological needs are addressed. As of May 2023, the captive population is about 156 birds, all in zoos and other facilities in both Europe and North America. As of early 2006, it was prepared to remove the sheep and get rid of the island of cats. In the meanwhile, while the maintaining of the remaining bird stock in reintroduction is to be provided. So that's quite cool. So, reintroduction efforts. In order to protect these birds and eventually reintroduce them into the wild, various reintroduction and conservation efforts have been germinated. In 1994, the bird's native island of Socorro was declared a biosphere preserve. So that's kind of the first bit that helps. In addition, as the number of birds in captivity only slightly above 100, various associations have begun breeding programs that includes the EAZA, as well as zoos as Frankfurt and Cologne. In 2013, the breeding program was successfully introduced into Mexico by the EAZA in collaboration with various government organizations such as CIMA, CIMANET, and the Mexican Navy. And in London Zoo in April 2025, 8 Sirocco dove chicks hatched, which made a milestone in efforts to save the species, as there's only 180 of them left globally, cared by fewer than 50 institutions. So we'll see if we can find a girl again, because we had a look at her. Let's see if we can find another one. There we go. See, it doesn't have quite that patch there. Very, very cool. So more specific actions taken to help the species. Construction of aviaries on Sirocco Island began in 2003. Avian malaria and trichomoniasis was detected during screenings of other dove populations in neighbouring islands, and as a result, recommendations of protection of the reintroduction program was put forward. Construction of aviaries completed in 2025. The same year, plans were outlined to assess the level of soil erosion on Sirocco and the result of vegetation loss. In 2006, there was an outbreak of avian influenza in Europe, and therefore 12 doves were actually sent to the Albuquerque National Biological Park as a reserve population. And in 2008, the Edinburgh and Paddington Zoos sent 12 chicks for their breeding program to the zoo as part of a collaboration aggression effort. The original plan was to reintroduce these birds into Mexico in 2008, but it was delayed due to import restrictions and permits, so the stock of viable individuals was kept in the US. By 2010, the use of hunting and telemetry, all sheep were eradicated from the island, and the stock was aggregated in the US and finally transferred to Mexico in 2013. So they finally got their birds. As of 2011, the problem of cats and house mice have not yet been resolved on Sirocco Island. I wouldn't be surprised if they hadn't done something yet, but again, that's over 10 years ago. So hopefully they manage to do it. With all these island eradications that New Zealand's been doing, I hope we can help them out with that. In addition to these efforts to control cats, other animals, and human activities, such as ATV usage on Sirocco Island, efforts are underway to actually control locust swarms, with outbreaks of them occurring at least twice a year since 1994, and have damaged native vegetation. So they do need quite a bit of help. But yeah, very, very cool species. It's not very often we get to talk about an extinct species, extinct the wild species, so hopefully these guys get another chance to go out to the wild. They do deserve a good chance. But anyway, we're going to carry on. Next up, we've got a really cool little marsupial. This is called the Kutala, also called the Jerboa marsupial, is its other name. So let's see if we can find you. Look at you, how cute you are. This cute little guy. So this is Artechio mammisalenga, or the kiltar. These guys are a small insectivorous marsupial inhabiting the arid interior of Australia. So they're quite a cool animal. They're in the Dasyuridae. They have quite unique morphological features. It is nocturnal, and it hunts a variety of invertebrates that include spiders, crickets, and cockroaches. So during the day, it shelters in a burrow, in hollow logs, beneath grass, tussocks, and at the base of shrubs and trees, or cracks in the soil. So males typically weigh between 17 and 30 grams, and 80 to 100 millimeters in length, while females are slightly smaller at between 14 to 29 grams and about 70 to 95 millimeters in length. So not too much of a difference between them. They have a brown or fawny sandy colour that you can easily see on there, because you can see having a little swim there. They also have quite a long tail with a distinctive dark brush at the tip. Looks quite fun there. The muzzle's also sharply pointed, with the eyes and ears also being particularly large, and the eyes having a darker ring around them, as you can see there. Look like they got mascara on. They are have distinguished elongated hind limbs and have 4 toes similar to other macropods, or similar to macropods, because these guys aren't technically a macropod. It's like kangaroos and stuff. Their hind limbs are designed for a bipedal or hopping style movement, used to evade predators and catch prey like insects. And they're actually capable of moving at about 13.8 kilometers an hour in open country, which is quite impressive for a little guy. In terms of their taxonomy, they're the only member of their group, Antixiomimus in the family Tschuridae. They're originally collected by Sir Thomas Michael in New South Wales, and they were originally considered a type of Phascogale, but then moved into their own genus. So very interesting as well. And there has been some debates and stuff like that, and there actually has been a 2025 study that she talked about different species. So this one is just called the Coulter. There is a couple other species, as we kind of mentioned before. Let me grab the names. There's 4 species. I think one might be extinct, but there's a few. There's 3 different species. This one, let's check the species of this one just quickly. Yeah, this is the Langia, which is pretty much the most famous one. Fits pretty spot on. Let's see if I can find a male. Now we're talking about the males. There we go. A little bit bigger and clearly quite cute. So very, very fun. Yeah, so there's 2 additional species, the Gilbert Coulter, and then the was originally as different species, and subspecies. They were all just put as different species. So this species does occur in the vast areas of semi-arid and arid Australia, but has declined in a lot of its former range. It is now uncommon, with populations suffering from seasonal fluctuations. They have sadly disappeared from Victoria and southern New South Wales at the Murray-Darling Junction, and populations in southeast South Australia, Cedar Bay in North Queensland, and Western Queensland have now disappeared. Though populations in the Northern Territory and Western Australia are stable, Kutar populations around Cobar and Western New South Wales persist as well, and they have become regionally important for the conservation of the species. And there has been some recent sightings of them in 2015 in central Western New South Wales, and they have not been seen there for over 20 years, so hopefully they're making a good comeback. So, lifestyle and reproduction. So the lifestyle of these guys in the wild is unknown, but in captivity they can live up to 5 years. They have distinct geographical variations in breeding season, and the breeding and onset of estrus comes in the second half of the year in eastern populations, and western populations it occurs slightly later. Males are mature at about 9 to 10 months, and females 11 to 12. They are polyestrous, which means they can enter estrus multiple times during a breeding season. They have a crescent-shaped pouch consisting of a small fold of skin with 6 to 8 teats, and the young are carried in the pouch. Clearly these guys are a bit too young to be big to be carried in a pouch at the moment, but they're carried in the pouch for about 20 days, then they hold on to mother back when they're done, as she forages for leaves or left in the burrow. Both subspecies have different teat numbers, so one has 8 and one has 6, and they can actually be used to differentiate between the 2 subspecies. And they can be hard to breed in captivity. So in terms of their home ranges, they do migrate from different locations throughout the year, with meaning local populations can vary quite a bit. They also can decline in response to good rain, where Coulters prefer drier seasons. Movement and home ranges of these guys can vary up to about 1,700 meters per night for males and 400 meters per night for females. And they disperse and negotiate very, very much different habitats. They're primarily insectivores as well, feeding on spiders, cockroaches, beetles, and crickets. And they've been known to prey on other species of small marsupial as well. And they have been described as being, quite good at digesting things. So their habitat, they like a range of habitats, but they prefer sparsely vegetated areas. So like savannas, stony deserts, grasslands, scrublands, those kind of areas. And they actually do go into torpor as a adaptation. So because they're an endotherm with a very high metabolic rate, just like us, but they're so small they get rid of heat so quickly. Conserve energy though, they actually go into a state of torpor where their body temperature is reduced, similar to hibernation. Their body temperature drops to 11 degrees Celsius, and that reduces their metabolic rate by 30%, conserving energy and reducing water loss, with torpor occurring in the evening and early morning, lasting between 2 to 16 hours. Species that enter torpor are referred to as heterothermic endotherms, and other species of dasyurids in arid Australia use this to combat limited resources. The benefits, though, is that they can have an extended lifetime, and this is an advantage in the harsh environment where the eventual enabling recovery of populations after bad times, so they're better able to handle that as well. It's also used during the breeding season to ensure breeding success even during poor seasons, so that's quite cool as well. But yeah, there's quite a few threats to survival. So they are threatened by habitat degradation, which was by us, bringing rabbits and sheep and cattle to destroy vegetation, and also us burning forests. We introduced cats and foxes to Australia, which eat them. Flooding is another big issue, and fire as well. Also insecticides that control locusts. The toxins can accumulate in these guys, and they can become sick and die from the poisoning. But luckily, they are considered endangered species in New South Wales and near threatened in Northern Territory, but in other places at least concern. So they're not doing too bad. Overall, I believe overall they're least concerned, but there are threats they're facing. Just because an animal's least concerned doesn't mean it's not facing issues. So it's quite good that, there's still a lot of people aware of helping these little guys. There are a few target conservation programs for these guys. What they do is they control the populations of foxes, rabbits, and feral cats, maintain the habitats for them, reduce stocking rates of cattle to protect them as well, reduce retention of the understory to help find places for them to hide, and report any new sightings of the species. So there's really a lot of people trying to help them just by preserving the habitat, and that's really what they need. They're not in that dire race of extinction yet, which is a good thing, and we hope that they don't ever get to that point. Alright, we're going to carry on. So next up, we have got the Sandbar Lion. So this was another mod by Great Kicks Mod, this Kiltai here. This one's done by Sky Polaris. You know how much I love Sky Polaris. Always coming in with some interesting mods. So here we have got the Sandbar Lion. So these guys are this was actually first an individual. So it was a particularly massive individual of an extinct Middle Pleistocene species of cat, or species of lion, the Panthera fossilaris, or Panthera splaya fossilaris, whether it's a subspecies or species. Kind of depends on who you ask. But yeah, this is a population of pretty much prehistoric cave lions. Because the modern cave lion that we think of is Panthera splaya, but there was a larger one that evolved before them, Fossilaris. So it gets called the early cave lion, or that's what it's kind of called. And this one refers to a particular specimen that was discovered in Ukraine. So based on fossil fragments like the heel bone and the molar, scientists estimated that this beast may have weighed between 440 to over 500 kilograms, which makes it a strong contender for one of the largest cats ever to live. So as I mentioned, conservative estimates about 440 to over 500 kilograms, which surpasses modern lions and tigers. And they had an estimated height of 1.40 meters, or approximately just 4'6" at the shoulder. And, very interesting there. They lived during the Middle Pleistocene. So they kind of represent the upper size limit. This is like the Shaquille O'Neal of early cave lions. And it's interesting, it highlights an unusual evolutionary pattern where these giant Ice Age lions actually decreased in size leading up to their extinction. You'd think it'd be the other way around, especially with how much colder it got, which is very interesting. Very, very cool animal. But yeah, I think that's about it for that one. It's just referring to a single specimen, but we'll have a look at the other ones. Look at that. Cute, cute, cute. I would be lying, if I didn't have a look at these guys. Is that a poo or a baby? Well, it's both. So those cute little guys. I actually am so impressed with the Planet Zoo 2 lion. It's actually impressive. But yeah, very, very awesome. So yeah, we'll let these guys do their thing. Next one's also done by Sky Polaris. This is the Okavango lion. Oh, wait, no. We'll actually have a look at the Zoopedia, see if there's anything else interesting. Famous, box bodies, Yeah, that's pretty much what we said. Sandbar in Ukraine. Yeah, the 912 kilograms. Yeah, that's the size of a rhino. I don't think any lion's ever got that big. I don't think they can worth it. But here, we got another Sky Polaris mod. This is the Okavango lion. So, a very, very cool animal. So these guys are not really a different they're not a particular, subspecies or anything. They're just a population of lions that we like to talk about. You probably heard them in documentaries like the giant lions of the Okavango and stuff like that. But they're They're found in Botswana, the Okavango Delta lions. They're often referred to as super lions or swamp lions. And they're actually world famous because of the unique physical adaptations and their semi-aquatic lifestyle. You know, a lot of cats don't like water, but these guys tend to take it in their stride. So, unlike typical savanna lions that avoid deep water, these apex predators are fully adapted for the Okavango ecosystem, which is very seasonally, dynamic. Also floods seasonally and is a wetland. So some adaptations they have in comparison. Because they're wading through water and fighting larger animals, they get quite robust shoulders, and they become like bodybuilders of lions. They also primarily hunt during the days to capitalize on cooler wetland temperatures and visible aquatic prey. They also tend to swim a lot more, and they specialize in larger mega prey. So, as I mentioned, things like the Cape buffalo is a pretty good one there. They tend to get a little bit larger, not super large, not like they're a different distinct populations, to get quite a bit bulkier. So a male can get up to about 100, 250 kilograms, while male's about 190 for a typical savanna lion, 170 kilograms for a female lion, 140 for a typical, savanna lion. While normal lions typically live in dry grasslands and stuff like that, these guys tend to live in channels and islands and stuff along the Okavango. And these guys also eat larger animals and more animals adapted to water, things like Cape buffalo, leshwe, and chikungas, while normal African lions or typical savanna lions feed on wildebeest, zebra, and medium-sized antelope. And these guys are quite good swimmers, while the other ones aren't. They were famously spotlighted by Natural Geographic filmmakers Derek and Beverly Joubert, who documented details of intense battle between these buffalo hunting Tesaro pride and the massive herds on the Dumba Plains. And today there is believed to be about 1,200 lions that live within the delta, and they face ongoing environmental pressures, but benefit greatly from community-led conflict mitigation and the funding from high-end eco-responsible safaris. So luckily, it's a good story, not just a bad one. So very, very cool. So we'll have a quick look at the Zoopedia as well. Yeah, 2,000, that's what we kind of mentioned. Yeah, we kind of already mentioned that. See what else we can mention. Yeah, the strong, yeah. Lion densities are also especially high, with 3.1 individuals per 100 kilometers. So yeah, quite boxed in too. The lion population in northern Botswana increased by 50% over 4 years due to conservation efforts reducing lion hunting and lion conflicts. That's awesome. So hopefully we can apply that to the rest of the country and hopefully the rest of the world. Home ranges for Okavango lions can be extensive, averaging 580 kilometers squared for males and 319 for females. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. See, that's a big male there. We'll have a look at the female. I would love to have a look at that lion, And then we've got here this little goofy goober here. Very, very cute. All right. We got a last Sky Polaris mod for today. We have got the giant cheetah. Let's have a look at these guys. So not the Asian giant cheetah that we covered last time. This is the giant cheetah. The giant cheetah. So this is Ixionyx pandarensis, or pardarensis. So these guys, also known as the giant cheetah, belong to the Ancyona genus, so they're closely related to the cheetah. They were native to Eurasia from the late Pleistocene to the early Middle Pleistocene, so about 3 million to about 500,000 years ago, and was quite substantially larger than the living cheetah. This guy was not as big as the Asian giant cheetah, but they were quite large, about twice the size of the modern cheetah. They weighed between 160 to 121 kilograms, or about 132 to 267 pounds. Its morphology and its skull actually showed some similarities to pantherine cats, though it was not as short and deep as that of a modern cheetah, though its teeth still greatly resembled that of a modern cheetah. Its limb bones, like modern cheetah, were quite elongate. Its lumbar vertebrae were also elongate. That was suggesting it was quite flexible. And compared to living cheetahs, though, their femurs were more straight and their fibula was more robust and not fused to the tibia. The humerus was all more robust, and the inner ear of this species also lacks some of these specialist adaptations that living cheetahs have for fast running, such as the extensive expansion of the vestibular canal and the elongation of the semicircular canals, and more resemble ancestral felid, morphology. So they likely didn't have the same running adaptations that modern cheetah have for catching and finding prey. So that's quite interesting too. So they are sometimes considered a macro species. It includes some other things that are subspecies, but I'll say that's just one species. So they are known from remains spanning from Western Europe to China, from the late Pliocene to the Middle Pleistocene, and the true number of species within Asionyx is unclear. The early fossils show that was found, they came around about 3 million years ago, and the youngest record is from Germany, about 500,000 years ago. So like modern cheetah, these guys generally would have thought to have been adapted to running down prey, but they did take larger prey than cheetahs, with a prey range of about 500 to 100, not 500, 50 to 100 kilograms, or 110 to 220 pounds. The idea that its ecology was similar to modern cheetahs, which has been contested by some authors, and actually suggests it was more similar to pantherine cats, which kind of makes sense. They don't have all the same adaptations. They may have been faster than them, but they're still, faster than other pantherine cats. But these guys likely may have still been not as fast as modern cheetahs. A 2011 study of the mandible shapes suggested that, like the cheetah, it took down medium-sized prey. And due to its larger body size, it didn't reach the same speeds as modern cheetah. That was likely still a fast sprinter. The morphology of its carnassial teeth actually suggests, like modern cheetah, it did not consume bone, and probably left large parts of the carcasses for other carnivores. And while a 2011 study suggested it killed its prey like suffocation by modern cheetah, just like a modern cheetah, they actually suggested that they killed their prey via a neck bite, similar to, pantherine cats. A study as well looking into late early Pleistocene, a site in Germany, dated to 1 million years old, suggests that they would have actually primarily preyed upon calves, or say foals, of the equine Equus wistii and fallow deer as well as juvenile other animals such as bison, the elk moose ancestor Cervus canatorum, the large deer Dulaceros gullii, and early roe deer. So potentially would have been eating a lot of those animals. In the early Pleistocene in Europe, these guys would have lived with an animal we're actually going to be meeting soon, Pliococardio and Champsopteristes, the saber-toothed cats Megatherion and Homotherium, the cougar relative Puma pandoroides, and the primitive lynx insularis, and also the bear Ursus etruscus, and the early wolf carnivore Canis etruscus, along with the wild dog Xenocyon. But in the early Pleistocene, 2.1 million years ago, those hyenas went extinct, and this time period gave rise to the giant hyena Pachycocata and the European jaguar, Panthera goblinensis. And at the end of the Pleistocene, about 1 million to 800,000 years ago, that marked the extinction of Megatherion, Pachycocata, and Puma pandoroides, and the arrival of European leopards, cave hyenas, and Panthera fossilaris, who we just talked about. Yeah, very, very cool animal. So that's mum. Let's have a look at the baby. Very, very cute little baby. I love how fuzzy they are. And then here's Papa. Papa cheetah. Very, very cool. Anyway, we're going to carry on. We're going to go with the last, certainly not least, a very, really cool Great Cakes mod. This is the, as I mentioned, the running hyena, or Champsopteris, also known as the hunting or running hyena. So let's have a look at these guys here. There we go. So Champsopteris, also known as the hunting or running hyena, was an extinct genus of hyenas found in Eurasia, North America, and Africa during the Pleistocene, living from about 4.9 to 780,000 years ago. So about 4.12 million years, 4.12 million years. So very widely spread. I think it was the only hyena to make it to North America. So that's pretty impressive. This genus probably arose from the Eurasian Miocene hyenas such as Thalassictus and Lysahyena, with C. borisaki being the oldest representative. But this species, I believe, is Orsopharicus. Let me check the species name. Yes, that's the correct species. Probably the most famous species in its genus. This was the only hyena to cross the Bering Land Bridge and into the Americas, where it ranged from Arizona to Mexico during the Balkan and early Chattonian land mammal ages between 5.0 to 1.5 million years ago, so for 500,000 years. So quite impressive. So very, very impressive animal. These was one of those so-called dog-like hyenas, of which the aardwolf is the only modern survivor. A hyena branch, which is in contrast to the more common modern, bone-crushing ones, So you have, your spotted hyena and brown hyenas, which are much more similar to, or even, like those guys. And then you have the dog hyenas, which includes the aardwolf, and I believe the, striped hyena might fit in that category. It's a little bit of a one in my head right now, but these are the last relatives of these ones. And those ones were, the brown and the spotted hyenas were all bone-crushing, heavy-built animals, while these guys were actually quite slender, cursorial hunters, almost analogous to modern canids. So a very interesting animal in that regard. So very, very cool. So their name means basically for Greek Chapson, in the Greek, destroyer, ravager, and their name is meant to represent the North American species Champsopotheres ossifragus, which was can't speak properly. Probably saw the beginning of the Grand Canyon, so that's kind of where it came from. And it's quite a few different species. That one's kind of the famous one. It's also the type species. In terms of anatomy, the limb bones of these guys were long and slender like those of cheetah, and it likely would have inhabited the open areas, like grasslands and savannas, and was a daytime hunter. The European species was regarded as an active group hunter of medium-sized ungulates, and would have preyed on gazelles and antelope, and would have competed with the giant cheetah that we're just talking about. The North American one was quite similar in build, but a little bit larger, and it would have believed to have preyed on the giant marmot, Paleomamota, and competed with the far more numerous Borophagus dividendans, which is a genus of bone-crushing dog, which was endemic to North America. The cheek teeth of these guys were slender and sharp-edged like those of felids, and relative to body size, the skull of C. lunus was actually superbly adapted for dissipating stress generated by struggling prey, which they would have subdued. And a study looking into the genus's premolar intercuspid notches include that these guys were hypercarnivorous rather than durophagous, and its modern cousins, excluding the aardwolves, are. So it likely would have been a lot more like a wolf than a modern hyena. Very interesting. The microscope structure of its enamel, of C. lunus actually consists of more generally folded enamel that was found in bone-crushing hyenids, further supporting the notion that they were not a specialist osteophagus, so not bone eaters like modern hyenas. So a little bit more like a wolf than a dog. Dental microwear in Australis, C. australis as well, from South Africa, suggests that the species was hypercarnivorous and really inferior in durophagy, and actually its dental microwear was very similar to those, looked very similar to those of modern lions, which suggests they don't very often consume bones, because lions don't do it very much either. So yeah, very, very cool little animal there. Really, really big fan of that. We'll have a look at the baby. A very cute little baby, just looks like a little one. So that was Dad. Let's see if you spot Mum, because typically actually mums are the top of the hyena world, but I don't know. These guys would have had it. Probably not. It looks very, very cool. Very weird to see. You can see it's very superficially dog-like, but it's definitely a hyena. It's a very interesting animal, and I'm really excited that we get to talk about it. So, we already talked about all this. Let's see if we can find anything else in here. Yeah, dog-like hyenids. Yeah, we talked about that. Probably saw the beginning of Grand Canyon. Yeah, that's all copy from what we just saw on Wikipedia. That's alright. Okay. And that was done by Grey Cakes Mod. You know she's always winning with that one. So, yeah. I, gonna thank everyone for, doing these mods. Thank you, Grey Cakes Mods, for your Milky Stalk, your Kotar, and your Running Hyena. Thank you, Sky Polaris, for both your lions and your cheetah. Thank you, Eliza Planet Zoo, for your Sirocco Dove, or Socorro Dove. Very, very happy with that. So, yeah, I think this is a great place to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always remember to hit the little bell icon to get notified about anything. See if you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.